Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include a rumor of a Diablo series coming to Netflix, the massive Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay trailer that dropped, the war on loot boxes really heating up, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the video description if you want to skip ahead. And as we're about to dive in here, make sure to have rang the sub notification bell to be alerted of new episodes. We'll kick things off with some Overwatch news that will tie into our loot box news. Now, earlier this week marked the end of the current Overwatch competitive season. And with just about 5 hours left in the season, that's when a lot of players are trying to get their final ranks, trying to complete their objectives, procrastination and all. So again, with about 5 hours left in the season, Blizzard decides, hey, this is a great time to release a patch that forcibly disconnects everyone. Now in Overwatch, when you leave a competitive game, you lose rank. And it doesn't matter if that's because your internet dropped, or apparently if the server forces you to leave because of an update. So lots of competitive players were very upset by this because it was not their fault, there was no warning. And in the past, Blizzard had implemented a system whereby if they were planning to release a patch and could not wait a few hours for competitive to end, then they would temporarily disable the ability to queue into competitive so that they can release the patch and then let you join your competitive matches so that no one can be disconnected and thus lose rank. This seems like a rookie mistake that Blizzard really shouldn't be making. But in other Overwatch news, and this ties into our loot box news, Blizzard has removed the ability to buy loot boxes in Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm in Belgium. Belgian players can still earn loot boxes through gameplay, but in both these games, they can no longer purchase them. Here's a statement from Overwatch community manager Veneras. Quote, in April 2018, the Belgian Gaming Commission published a report that was endorsed by the Belgian Ministry of Justice, in which they concluded that paid loot boxes in Overwatch are considered gambling under local law. While we at Blizzard were surprised by this conclusion and do not share the same opinion, we have decided to comply with their interpretation of Belgian law. As a result, we have no choice but to implement measures that will prevent Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm players located in Belgium from purchasing in-game loot boxes and loot chests with real money and gems. So we've been following the war on loot boxes since it really came to a heat in around November 2017, thanks to Star Wars Battlefront 2 ruining it for everyone by getting too greedy. That kicked off some major controversy that got governments involved, and it proved that, yes, if we make enough noise, we can trigger something to happen. Whether that something is good or bad, well, we'll find out. And in other related news, PEGI, P-E-G-I, the Pan-European Game Information Organization, which is Europe's equivalent of the ESRB, and assigns age ratings to video games, has announced a new content descriptor, in-game purchases. And by descriptor we mean contains violence, contains nudity, contains in-game purchases. Now, in-game purchases is already a descriptor used by PEGI, but only for digital games. But with this newest announcement, by the end of the year, this little icon will begin to appear on physical copies of games that include in-game purchases. Now, this seems like a win for consumers, but before we celebrate too much, we need to take note of something. PEGI was developed by the Interactive Software Federation of Europe. And in case the name isn't evil enough to tip you off, the ISFE's purpose is to represent the interests of software developers, not consumers. And this is made obvious when you see a list of the members of the ISFE, which include Activision Blizzard, Bandai Namco, Disney Interactive Studios, Electronic Arts, Nintendo, Sega, Sony Computer Entertainment Europe, Square Enix, Take-Two Interactive, Ubisoft, Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment, among others. So you can make the analogy that PEGI and the ESRB are like a company's human resources department. We're meant to think that human resources is there to serve us. But make no mistake, they're there to represent the best interests of the company. So knowing this, how can we reinterpret this news coming from PEGI? We know that governments are starting to crack down on loot boxes. So PEGI implements this new measure, which doesn't specifically target loot boxes, but just a whole blanket statement on in-game purchases. This in-game purchase indicator does not alter a game's age rating, whereas gambling elements, which certain governments are now starting to claim that loot boxes fall under, would alter a game's age rating. So through this move, PEGI gets to make it seem like they're doing something to protect the consumer's interests, when in reality, they're just trying to placate us and the government. It's like if there were some scandal in which human meat were found in a company's hamburger beef patties, and the company solved the issue by putting a label that says, contents are not 100% beef. That's not the main issue, but sound off in the comments with your thoughts on all this. Next, let's talk about the big exciting news this week, the 48-minute Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay trailer that released this week. 48 minutes of near uncut gameplay, and we really get to see how this game is going to be a narrative-driven, open-world RPG. We see how you can fully customize your character, who in this case is Cooler Sombra, going as far as to defining a backstory. We see how they're really focusing in on the first-person perspective for maximum immersion, but you do sometimes have little cutscenes where you see your character in third person. We get a really good glimpse at the cyberpunk vibe of this game. We hear techno beats or whatever kind of genre music you want to describe it as. It really fits the mood. There's some really grotesque imagery in parts where you find someone whose implants have been harvested. You got scenes with destructible environments that's reminiscent of the Matrix lobby scene. And of course, you have the whole bullet time effect to go with that. And at least from the gameplay shown, it does seem that this is very much an FPS. In other words, you gotta aim and shoot. Throughout the entire demo, I don't think I saw a single loading screen. Everything was so seamless. Players are free to explore the city on foot or on vehicle, and that does give it a little bit of a Grand Theft Auto vibe. We do see a really cool chase sequence where you're driving your car and another car pulls up and a gunfight ensues while driving. The narration helps us understand that there are different ways to solve missions. There are non-violent solutions, for instance, and sort of depending on the skill set that you choose to level up, that might open up different pathways to go about solving a mission. We saw a good variety of cool weapons, including shotgun that's really good at punching holes in environments or shooting off legs. We saw a smart gun that has homing bullets, which makes the FPS part of the game a little less skill dependent, but that did seem like a very high level weapon. But I think the coolest thing that we saw was the ricocheting bullets. I love the Ripper in Unreal Tournament, so bullets that you can like calculate the ricochet angles to strike enemies around corners and stuff, that sounds super cool. And of course, we see the signature Mantis blades in action. Overall, it looks like this game is shaping up to be a mixture of Batman, Mass Effect, GTA, Ghost in the Shell, Deus Ex, Fallout, and of course, its own thing too. But I can definitely see why so many people are hyped about this game, and sound off in the comments. Do you think Cyberpunk will live up to the hype? In other good news about Cyberpunk, we got word from Engadget that while the game has been in development for at least 6 years, the team recently hit a major milestone in which the entire game is now playable from start to finish. Now, this is an open world game, so that just means the main storyline, and they stress that it's not bug-free and not all the assets are finalized, but still, that does sound like some good progress. On to some Path of Exile news. The devs previewed a new skill effect that would apply to the Scorching Ray skill, named the Shaper Scorching Ray. In case you're unfamiliar, in Path of Exile, you can buy cosmetic skins for animations, for attack abilities. And this skill here basically takes the animation from a boss and lets you wield the power of Shaper cosmetically. Now, at the time that you're watching this video, the new League, Delve, has launched along with patch 3.4.0. Earlier this week, we got a dev post on some balance changes coming to Delve. I really like to see when it's not just patch notes, when the devs explain why changes are being made, and some highlights include Sunder, Shield Charge, and Kinetic Blast being nerfed. We of course also got the full patch notes, and I'll have links in the video description as always. Block got nerfed pretty heavily. We got some great quality of life changes for solo self-hound players, but to me the most exciting change is that they finally implemented a system that really encourages cooperative play. Basically, previously, if you had a high-level player playing with a low-level player, both players would be penalized. Now the higher-level player will be downscaled to the same level as a lower-level player. I can't wait to try out this system. Alright, on to Diablo news. We received official word that Season 14 will be ending on September 16th, and Season 15 will begin on September 21st. That's slightly sooner than expected. 1 week sooner. Also in Diablo news, Diablo 3 and the Necromancer pack are on sale up to 50% off, and in slightly delayed Diablo news, while we didn't get anything officially new out of Gamescom for Diablo, there is one little thing that I missed and didn't manage to include in last week's video. Now we can see in this clip from a Twitch stream, clipped by Paragon137, we have a Diablo 3 dev saying, there's some really cool things coming our way as ARPG fans.
So what is going to happen at BlizzCon for Diablo, and if there's anything new for Diablo planned? Tweet.
So, Brandy, right? Brandy
yeah, Brandy.
Just put out a video maybe, I don't know, a week ago now.
Yeah.
Talking about, that there's a lot of
coming up.
Cool things coming up for Diablo, right? What I can say is that this is a great time to be a Diablo player.
Okay. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
this is a great
time. Yeah.
There's some really cool things coming our way as ARPG fans.
And okay.
So stay tuned.
Now, there's been a lot of speculation as to what's to come for Diablo. We know for sure that there are multiple Diablo projects in the works, but there was a lot of speculation. Will it be Diablo 4? Will it be a Diablo 2 remaster? Will it be something else entirely? A non-action RPG kind of game? Well, this helps to narrow things down, at least with respect to one of the projects. If it's something cool for ARPG fans, then I think that narrows it down to either a remaster or a new Diablo ARPG. And of course, there could be more than one project. Okay, but on to the biggest Diablo news of the week. Website Revenge of the Fans is reporting a rumor that there is a Diablo Netflix series in the works. This story comes from Editor-in-Chief Mario Francisco Robles, and he claims to have received, quote, a hot rumor that the Diablo video game franchise will be getting its own series on Netflix, and will be written by Andrew Cosby, who is currently a writer on the upcoming Hellboy remake. Now, odds are, if this is true, that Diablo will likely get the Castlevania treatment. That is to say, an animated series, and I think that would be awesome. A full CGI series seems like a bit too much work, but before we even get into speculating on that, anytime we see a rumor, we need to do our best to analyze how likely it is to be true. Now, in this case, we don't have much to work with, so let's start with analyzing our source. The website Revenge of the Fans is less than a year old, but the editor-in-chief has been working as a journalist for a number of years. And trying to research him, he does seem to have connections in the movie industry and a particular interest in the DC comic universe of movies. So talking about something like Diablo does seem to be outside of his wheelhouse. I also couldn't track down any major scoops that he had that turned out to be true. I'm not saying there are none, just that in my research I didn't turn up anything that was verified to be true. So our source isn't completely untrustworthy, but it isn't a source that is known to consistently have legit scoops. So now let's move on to analyzing the actual claim. Andrew Cosby is said to be the writer of the Diablo Netflix series, so let's see what we can dig up on him. Well, we can find this IMDb entry for a project that he's been working on. The Untamed, A Sinner's Prayer, directed by Andrew Cosby. Now, this page was last edited a year ago, showing that this project was in pre-production at the time, and labeled as action and fantasy, the storyline synopsis is, The Untamed is a tale of retribution and redemption, set in a small, rustic, violence-ridden town within a dark fantasy world. Sound kinda like Tristram? Dead for 10 years, our hero makes a deal with the devil. He is given 7 days to return to the world of the living, to take revenge on the killers of him and his family. Conflict arises when a young girl, reminding him of his daughter, becomes his conscience and salvation, giving him courage to use his powers in defiance of the ultimate evil. Now, up to this point, you can say, well, this could potentially be a synopsis for a Diablo story, for a story told in the Diablo universe. You know, there's maybe some things you gotta move around to make it fit, but it's not completely unreasonable. Maybe this has been a secret Diablo project all along. Well, we can see that the screenplay writer is listed as Sebastian A. Jones, and when we dig into that, we find this. The Untamed, A Sinner's Prayer is a graphic novel that was released in 2015, written by Sebastian A. Jones, and definitely having nothing to do with Diablo. So what do we gather from this? That Andrew Cosby is working on an adaptation of a graphic novel with a plot that involves the devil. So, is Andrew Cosby just scooping up every job that involves writing about hell and the devil? Or is it possible that this scoop that Revenge of the Fans got was a misunderstanding and actually related to this project, particularly given that they don't seem like experts in Diablo? Or could the scoop even possibly have been related to or gotten confused with a movie adaptation of the graphic novel The Mexorcist, which was said to have Andrew Cosby as a writer and includes a character named El Diablo. So overall, I don't have high hopes for this rumor. I'd love it to be true, and I hope it turns out to be true. But I just don't see this as being a strong rumor that we can put faith in. But what are your thoughts? Am I being too pessimistic here? Sound off in the comments. Now lastly, an update on Diablo job postings. It's been a long time since we've seen any changes in the unannounced projects, but now 2 job postings have gone down: rigging artist temp and VFX artist. So those 2 positions appear to have been filled. And that's gonna wrap up this video. Be sure to have checked out last week's video where we discuss the big leak that happened in the world of Diablo. And if you have an idea for a story that you'd like to see me cover, go ahead and post it on our subreddit. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider becoming a Royal Raider on Patreon, where your support is immensely appreciated. We've got a variety of backer rewards, including behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.